Thanks, Brian. Welcome. With a quorum present of 75, we'll begin our meeting tonight. There are a few more people outside, and I'm hopeful they'll get in here before we get to any votes. Welcome to the May 1, 2023 annual town meeting for the town of Bolton. As is our tradition, let's all stand, please, and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll introduce everyone up front here. I'm Doug Story, your town moderator. To my right is Pam Powell, our town clerk. And to my left are the two members of our select board, Stan Wysocki and Bob Sikansky. Beyond them are our advisory board with Brian Boyle, Omid Garoni, William Nichols, Robert Guerrero, Craig Lauer, and Greg Myers. Not necessarily in that order. And over here, we have our town council, Brian Falk, and Don Lowe, our town administrator. Just want to go through a few rules and procedures. We don't allow cameras. We do have this being filmed for Bolton Access TV, and they'll be showing it at a later time. It's not shown live. Our tradition is to have all our votes by voice, saying aye or nay. Aye if you're in favor, nay if you're opposed. Last year we introduced the electronic devices, which everyone has. And if you don't have, raise your hand, we'll get you one. Does anyone not have one that should have one? Okay, we're going to use these pretty extensively tonight. Maybe not every vote, but we want to give them a good run through and make sure we're all comfortable with them. Very simple. There's a green button for yes or aye, red button for no, the yellow button is abstain. Any of those three buttons will register your vote. On the back, you're going to see a number. That's your number. When we go to do a vote, you're going to see your number up on the screen, and if the number is highlighted, your vote will have been counted. We're not going to see your vote, but that's just so everyone knows that their vote was counted. And again, in the event that anybody has a device that doesn't appear to be working, go back outside and we'll get you a new one, okay? Obviously, these help a lot for the contentious votes, votes that are 2/3, 4/5. So they've helped us, and we'll use them going forward. A few other things. We've got two microphones in front. When you'd like to speak on an article, please come up to the microphone, be ready. And then I'll recognize you at the microphone. Please introduce yourself, your name, and your address. And please keep your comments to about 1 minute. We like to keep it moving along and give everyone a chance to speak. We do have some presentations. Those will take a little longer. And if there's anyone who can't get to a microphone, if you raise your hand, we do have a microphone that we can bring to you. Please mute your cell phones. And that's all I have. Oh, one other thing. We did put 4 pages of information about town meeting at the front of the warrant this year. General information, who's involved, who the players are, what their role is, how do we vote, and then some of the more common motions that we make. Hope everyone had a chance to look at that. And hopefully that's a little bit helpful. So, that being said, are we going to do a practice vote first? What do we decide? Next screen, please. I guess we're not going to do a practice vote. So this is the first motion, Article 1, to accept annual reports, sponsored by the Select Board. Okay, thank you. That's why I'm down here, because I can't see anything.
Move the article, Mr. Moderator.
All right, we're going to do a test question first. And the test question is the number on the back of your remote voting device, I can't read it, odd or even? And green is going to be odd, is that right?
No, green is even.
Green is even, red is odd. Thank you. I need someone to read for me. Okay, so let's do a test vote. Let's open the question. You can begin voting as soon as I say the question's been opened. So again, you push the green if you're even, red if you're odd, yellow if you want to abstain from this vote. It's okay, you don't have to vote. And I've also been told that I have to give people time to make up their mind. Let's close the vote. And when I say close the vote, you can no longer change your vote. That's a good point, because you can change your vote up until that point. You can push green, you can push red, you can push green, and it's the last thing you push before we close the vote. So bear that in mind. So, let's see the results. We have 113 votes. This is why we're doing this. Do we want to try the second vote? Okay. So I believe what this shows us is the number of everyone's device. And we're going to start see them turning color, which means that you voted. So look on your device number, and let's make sure. You want to see blue if you voted. Is it going to total?
I think you gotta close the vote at some point. If we close the vote,
I did close the vote, but maybe that wasn't heard. Let's close the vote. Maybe we... Okay, there we go. 111 votes, 60 even, 50 odd. Does anyone feel like their number was not represented correctly? So did it not highlight, or did it not highlighted? All right, we're going to do a second vote, and let's try it again, and let's see if it happens again, okay? Can we do question 3? Okay, on this vote, it's do you plan to participate in the town election on May 8th, which is a week from tonight? And it's real important that you come back to the school here and vote in the annual town election. So this one should be all yes, I hope. We're opening the vote. You can now vote. So anyone's not working? I'm number 12.
What'd you say?
I said I'm number 12.
Oh.
But I don't vote anyway, so that's okay. I choose not to. It's not working? Can we bring another? We've got some new ones coming in. Is there a number 16 that's not working?
All right, that's good.
All right. Hopefully they're all working. All right, so everybody, it's going to take us a little while to get used to this, okay? A little patience. This is a good warrant to do this on. All right, let's move to the actual warrant. And Article 1 that has been sponsored by the Select Board to accept town reports. This requires a majority.
Move the article, Mr. Moderator.
second,
The article has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on Article 1? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Let's open the vote, Paul. All right, we're open. Please vote. There we go. Has everyone voted? Aye. Can you close it, Paul? One 1 1 against. Again, you can switch your vote accidentally if you go from green to red. That passes. Thank you. Article 2, unpaid bills for fiscal year 2022, sponsored by the Select Board. This requires a 4/5 majority, which
Moderator?
Second.
the article has been moved and seconded. Looks like there are 2 unpaid bills. Is there any question or debate on those unpaid bills? Seeing none, let's vote. Let's open that vote. Okay, it's open. You can be voting. Green is yes, red is no. Has everyone had a chance to vote? Let's close it, Paul, please. $126 to 3, that is definitely an 80%, which is what 4/5 majority is, so that passes. Thank you. Article 3, fiscal year 2024 operating budget. Sponsored by the Select Board, requires a majority vote.
Move the article, Mr. Moderator.
Second.
The article has been moved and seconded. I believe we have a presentation by the advisory committee first.
Yep.
So we'll
Thank you,
go to
Mr.
the
Moderator.
presentation screen.
Okay. While we are getting ready with the presentation, first of all, there we go. Let me just start on behalf of the advisory committee, thanking a bunch of folks: our town administrator, town treasurer, town accountant, town secretary, all the department heads, and also all the leadership of boards and committees across the town and the school districts, because as you can imagine, it does require a lot of collaboration and conversation to get through the budget. And before we get into the slides, I also just wanted to make one personal comment. This year, you may be looking up at the stage and realizing that a member of the advisory committee at last year's town meeting is not with us tonight. And that's Ann Hurd, who passed away last August. And I just wanted to say that it was really a pleasure to serve with Ann on various town committees and boards. And I know there's a lot of people in here who remember Anne for everything that she contributed to the town. So I just wanted to acknowledge her and to say that we miss her and we appreciate her service. Okay, so if we can just advance the slide to the one about the FY24 summary. Yep. Okay. So what we have here is a summary of the change in the operating budget from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. And that's an increase of 6.07%, total of 29.1 million. And now the operating budget is everything that we need to run the town's operations day to day, school district assessments, salary, benefits, and all that. On the next slide, you'll see what we call our total budgeted expenditures. And in years where we have a lot of capital projects, there's usually a bit of a difference between total operating budget and total budgeted expenditures. This year, there's just a slight change, a slight increase, because we really don't have many capital projects at all this year. So the total increase for all budgeted expenditures is 5.62%, and that gets us to 29.2 million. On the next slide, you'll see a familiar breakdown of our sources of revenue. As everybody here knows, property taxes are the lion's share of all revenue in the town of Bolton at about 89.3% of revenue. Then we make an allowance for abatement and exemption, which is basically if folks go to the tax collector and they apply for an abatement or exemption, we have to basically set aside money for successful abatement applications. So that's a decrease in our revenue. And then we have about $300,000 in state aid, which is only 1% of our revenue. And just so folks know, state aid, the lion's share of that is something called unrestricted general government aid, which is basically money from the state that cities and towns can apply to really any purpose. In lots of other municipalities, that state aid number is significantly more than 1% of the revenue. But in a town like Bolton, where a lot of what happens is the state aid numbers are based on various things like, you know, per capita income and population and all that, we really just, at this point, don't get very much. Although we're always advocating with the legislature to increase state aid so it at least keeps pace with the increase in state revenues. Local receipts is the next biggest component of our revenue. That includes things like your motor vehicle excise, license and permit fees, meals tax, things like that. This year, we're projecting an increase in local receipts, largely attributable to, there's a big project, 580 Main Street, and we're anticipating that with the fee and permitting activity for that complex, we're gonna see additional revenue under local receipts. Then we have other available funds, which includes things like ARPA money, and again, it's less than 1% of our available revenue. Free cash, actually, for this year's operating budget, we're using over $500,000 of free cash. We had 1.6 million free cash certified in the fall, so we were able to apply almost 600,000 of that to the operating budget. But we don't have any spending articles, so we're not using any free cash on articles, and we're also not borrowing. So that's an overview of our revenue. On the next slide, just in big chunks, our total expenditures. So 64% of our operating expenditures go to education, which is both Neshoba and Minuteman. Just a quick note, and I know we're going to go through the entire budget when we go through the article, but we do have enrollment up at Minuteman, which is a big driver in our increase in assessment for this year. Then our town salary and wages amounts to 15.7% of our total expenditures. Everything else, things like supplies, building maintenance, that's really in the other operating category, so 2.7 million. We spend just over 2 million on insurance, benefits, and retirement, and of course that includes health insurance for both active employees and retirees, and it also includes our OPEB contribution. Then we have a very small amount of other expenditures, and that includes like the mosquito abatement project that we're part of through the state. And this year we don't have any capital appropriations, so that's our total expenditures of 29.2 million. On the next slide, I won't linger here because I don't know if you can advance to the next slide. Maybe not. Okay. Yeah, it's just a snapshot of our operating budget by department. So again, education, biggest chunk. Then next after that is public safety, then employee benefits, public works, on down the line. So if folks have questions, I'm happy to go back to this, but this just gives you a sense of each major category of expenditure in the operating budget. On the next slide, this shows, and again, this is covered in the pages of the warrant. This shows the increase by both dollar amount and percentage in our operating budget. And debt service, you'll see this is the second year in a row that our debt service expenditure is down. And sort of we've been mindful of the fact that we may be having to take on more debt in the future, so it's actually a good thing that our debt service is tracking down the past couple of years. On the next slide, you just see our two articles related to capital items. All right, so I want to explain one thing. For Article 11, which proposes a replacement of the fire station roof, and there's details in the warrant, the funding source for that we're proposing to appropriate from the stabilization fund. The stabilization fund is basically the town's savings account that we only touch when there's a really good reason to. And we try to keep it at a certain level, and I'll go into that in a bit, but we're recommending that we take $345,000 from the stabilization fund for Article 11. And then for Article 12, which is seeking authorization for replacing fire engine 1, there's no money being spent in FY24. We're just seeking the authorization from town meeting to start that process. I know our fire chief is here in case people have questions, but basically there's a long lead time for these apparatus at this point, and so it's good to have the authorization in place. On the next slide, we've gone into the tradition of showing our financial policy targets. We want to try to be transparent with how we're doing. So on our free cash target, we want to get certified free cash from last fiscal year of about 3 to 5% of the total budgeted expenditures. So when our free cash was certified in the fall at 1.6 million, that was 4.29% of FY23's operating budget. So we were right where we wanted to be in the middle of our target. We also, looking ahead, want to maintain a free cash balance of at least $350,000 this year. If town meeting approves everything as has been recommended in the warrant, we'll head into FY24 with a free cash balance of over $600,000. We have a target for our general stabilization fund, the savings account. It should be at least 3 to 5% of the current operating budget. If town meeting approves the stabilization appropriation for the fire station roof, we'll actually drop below 3%. It'll be 2.44%. We're still recommending approval because we have a financial policy which basically commits us to replenishing the stabilization fund back up to at least 3% within 2 years. And so we've had conversations on the advisory committee and with the select board about making sure that we're injecting money back into the stabilization fund over the next 2 fiscal years. So that target's red for now, but don't worry about it. We can get there. And then for our overall reserves, we're actually still within our 6 to 10% target. We're on the low end at 6.35%, but that's stabilization, free cash, and overlay reserve. For maintaining debt service payments at no more than 5 to 7% of general fund revenues, we're below, in a good way, that target, so we have some capacity there. We're at 3.7%. And then finally, we have really tried to keep to our commitment of funding 100% of our annual required contribution to our OPEB, Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust, and we are fulfilling that commitment again this year as proposed in our operating budget, so that target is 100%. And then lastly, I'll just close by saying we always ask our assessors for an estimated tax rate for FY24. What's interesting, you can see that the prediction is that the average single-family value is going to increase by $57,000 to $769,000, average single-family value in Bolton. So although the average single-family tax bill is projected to increase $414, the tax rate per thousand will actually be dropping from $17.50 to $16.74. Again, these are all estimated, and it'll get finalized probably next November or December. But we wanted to share the information that we had at this point. And again, I know as we go through the line items, we may have questions there, but thank you so much for your patience and attention, and thanks for your support.
Thanks, Brian. We're going to hold all questions until when I go through the budget, okay? So we've got Brian's presentation from advisory. Now we're going to have a presentation by the Neshoba Regional School District on the school budget, and after that, we'll go through the budget by category, and at that point in time, if people have questions, that would be when we do it. Superintendent.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kurt. Can you hear me out there? Otherwise, I have to get down here. So, my name is Kurt Downing. I am the superintendent of the Neshoba Regional School District. We're very happy to see you all here tonight. I would like to introduce our Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Ross Mulcairn, who will be joining me tonight. And we'll be brief, but I just want to direct you to our school website where you'll see the budget book presented in detail, and there should be some links in the warrant as well. This book was a process of our three towns asking for more information, more detail about what constructs the budget. I encourage you to look at it. And at the back of the budget book is our strategic plan. So if you look through the strategic plan, it really defines what we're looking at in the future for what you're purchasing in your school system. So ultimately, when we're making budget decisions, we're going through a very thorough process. We're examining classroom size standards. We're looking at per pupil standards when it comes to acquiring materials for the classroom and equipment. The result of going through that process this year and developing standards across all three of our towns was actually a reduction of 7.5 positions in the district in total FTE to demonstrate our fiscal responsibility in making sure that the budget we bring forward is for the services that we are delivering to our students so that they receive a high quality education. And with that, I'll turn it to Mr. Mulcairn.
Thank you, Superintendent Downey, and thank you to the folks before us tonight, and thank you to the town of Bolton for the opportunity to present our FY24 operating budget to you this evening. If we went to the next slide, please. So this is an overall expense summary for our operating budget for FY24. You'll see that the majority of our budget is for salaries at about 60%, and then another $10.5 million for our insurance and benefits. And that total of the salary and insurance and benefits is approximately 80% of our operating budget. The remaining 20%, which makes up $12.8 million, is essentially all of the other costs that go into the operation of our excellent school district, from utilities to paper to pens to all other pieces, including transportation. So our total operating budget proposed for FY24 is $64.9 million. Go to the next slide, please. Here's a revenue summary of where we are projected to be for FY24. Essentially, the majority of the revenues do come from our town assessments to not just Bolton, but also Lancaster and Stowe. Our next largest revenue source is our Chapter 70 funding, which comes from the state, followed by regional transportation reimbursement. As a regional school district, we receive transportation reimbursement based on the number of eligible riders on the routes that we provide to our students. And then also our E&D appropriation is at $1.2 million for next year, out of the approximately $1.49 million of certified E&D that's been approved by the Department of Revenue. So again, our total revenue matches our total projected expenses for next year. And the final slide, which is most relevant to the town of Bolton, you'll see that the fixed assessment comes in at just over 10 million. And that's provided to us as a minimal local contribution, which is dictated by the state of Massachusetts. The variable assessment, we get that number based out of our 5-year rolling average, which is a component of the regional agreement. It's been a long-standing calculation for our member towns. And then finally, our net debt assessment, which is Bolton's share of our current debt obligations, which is solely based on a 1-year look at the enrollment at Neshoba Regional High School based on town of residence for those students. And for Bolton, it's just over $180,000, which brings Bolton's share of that, if you remember on the previous slide, of the local assessments, which brings Bolton's share to 17.5 million, which is an increase of 562,000 from last year, which puts your increase from last year of the total assessment up 3.32% from FY23.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, now we're going to go through the budget. If you have your warrant, and turn to page 23. What I do every year is read the item column and total. I don't go into the nitty-gritty in each area. And what I'll do is I'll go through several pages, and then I'll stop and ask if there's any questions. So if you have a particular question about the budget, about any department or the school budget, or about anything Brian said, you can come up to a microphone and ask that question when I stop and ask if there's questions. We are resetting our software, so if you see anything in the background, don't pay attention to it. All right. The FY 2024 budget. Total moderator, $50. Total select board, $20,000. And I'm just reading the approved, okay? $20,465. Town administrator, $288,910. Advisory committee, $185. Reserve fund, $100,000. Town accountant, $115,855. Board of Assessors, $171,244. Total treasurer, $141,098. Tax collector, $85,017. Human resources, $13,799. Legal services, $70,000. MIS, $74,323. Town clerk, $124,245. Elections, $9,390. Street listing registrars, $3,350. Conservation Commission, $107,317. Are there any questions on those 4 pages I just read? Seeing none, I'll continue. Sure. Sorry about that.
Jason Hutchins, 75 Moderator Way. I noticed there's quite a large salary increase. I know that you pointed out to it in the beginning of the town warrant, saying that you did an assessment, you trying to make sure we're competitive wages. I do question why a lot of these wages are double-digit increases in 1 year. I kind of find it hard to believe that we are that far off. I did look at Stowe. Last year, Stowe was making $150,000 for the town administrator. I'm just going to pick on the town administrator. It's the first one. $150,000. Our current town administrator is around $140,000 145,000. Lancaster's 135. And now all three towns are proposing an increase up to around 172 to 175,000. I just know in the private sector, 18 to 20% increases are rare, if at all. And I would like to wonder why we are proposing to bridge a gap, if there is one, in 1 year and not over multiple years, which would be typical in any private sector industry.
Thank you. I think it's me.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that question. It's a great question. Happy to explain sort of the process that the town goes through. So back in 2017, our prior treasurer, HR director, did a wage and salary study for non-union employees. So obviously the town of Bolton has unionized employees. We also have non-union employees. That wage and salary study hadn't been done again since 2017. And so this year we went through the same process. I believe our comps were Stowe, Lancaster, Harvard, Boxborough, and Boylston. There may have been another one. And the goal was to basically, for across the entire organization for the non-union employees, to get the range for all of those comps and for us to put our position at the midpoint of that range. So for example, the town administrator, the number that was selected was in the middle of the range for those 5 comps. The town administrator's position, I will tell you, was actually a huge outlier across the organization. Historically, it was shown to be a undercompensated position. And for example, if for some reason Don Lowe decided to retire tomorrow, we would probably even have to post it at potentially higher than we have right now, based on just what the prevailing rate is for a town administrator of a town of our size and with the experience that we'd be looking for. But setting aside the town administrator's position, we did this with all of them. So for example, you'll see some jumps. I don't want to pick on anybody, but that's what the jump was for, because it had been a long time, and so we were sort of behind the curve, whereas with our unionized employees, they're usually on a 3-year contract, so it's built in every 3 years. We'd basically gone almost 6 years without doing it. So that's why there's a jump in 1 year.
Thanks, Brian. Any other questions on those pages? Sorry. Okay. Feel free to come up to the microphone ahead of time.
Larry Sojourner, 84 Moderator Way. So the private sector isn't doing, again, what was stated was the private sector isn't doing anything like that. Your explanation explains that. So the public sector acts like, off my tax dollars, we're going to justify things. The private sector in this economic climate isn't doing that. So are you people oblivious to that, or do you just not care?
I think everybody heard the question. Certainly, we're not oblivious to the differences. Part of the challenge is that right now in our town hall, we have a team that is working really well. I don't want to get into all the details, but if you've been in town hall lately, you'll know that working conditions aren't necessarily great. And so we have to make sure that our salaries are at least competitive with our peer communities. So when we look at a community that's 5 miles away and the compensation for an equivalent position is 15% higher than we're paying in the town of Bolton, from an HR perspective, we're at risk of losing a talented member of our team if we just say, sorry, not going to do it. So that certainly doesn't ameliorate the fact that circumstances are different in the private sector for some employers and for some employees, but that's the rationale.
Thank you. I'm sorry. We don't have debates like that here. You have the opportunity to make a comment at the microphone and have it answered. You did.
And the answer is not correct.
Well, I'm sorry if you don't like it. we're going to move on. Next category, fire EMS. We're on page 29. $624,149. Building inspector, $137,393. Plumbing and gas inspector, $20,133. Which page? I did skip a page. I apologize. I did. I'm going to go back to 27. Planning board, $112,690. Appeals board, $200. Economic development, $750. Town buildings, $159,650. Town hall, $41,318. Public safety building, $225,155. Police department, $179,999. And I'm going to go over what I said previously, so we keep it in order. Fire EMS, $624,149. Building inspector, $137,393. Plumbing and gas inspector, $20,133. Wiring inspector, $23,316. Emergency management, $3,900. Animal control officer, $23,212. Traffic lights, $1,800. Tree warden, $71,910. Total public safety, $3,106,888. Please come up to the mic if you'd like to talk about anything I just read. Thank you.
Randall Porteous, 536 Sugar Road. I'm just curious what the 100,000 under building inspector is.
The Main
Okay,
Street.
yeah. So this is partially an accounting issue. So we're projecting, I want to say, almost $275,000 worth of fees coming in for inspections for that. And we have to be able to budget to pay for those inspections. And so really the increase here has to be budgeted as an expenditure, but it's more than made up for the cost of the inspections that are going to be paid for. But thank you for that question.
I just wanted to clear, can you hear me?
Can you please introduce yourself
Yep.
and tell us where
Ashley
you
Spring,
live?
76 Woolbley Road.
Thanks.
I just wanted to clear up a couple things. Cruiser purchase, we didn't hear anything about the police budget cruiser purchase. Is that something that happens every year? That's loud. And then also, can we talk a little bit about the firearm supplies? 15 grand, looks like it's the same every year. Is that like a recurring thing that happens every year? That's my question.
I'm sorry, could you please say your question again?
Yes. Is this reoccurring $15,000 for firearms for the police budget every year? It looks like it's the same from this year to last year. I'm a new Bolton resident. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. I'm a new Bolton resident, so this is the first time I've been to a town meeting. Sure. Is this $15,000 for firearms and supplies? Is that something that is the same for the Bolton Police Department every year? Is that something I can expect to see next year at the relatively similar amount? And what is that purchase? And then also, do we buy a police car every year? How does that work? Because it looks like that's on the budget as well for 2023.
Thank you. I've got it, and I think should we ask the police chief to answer that, or is it? Chief?
I can
Okay.
take a stab, and I know we have our chief of police here to supplement. So first on the cruiser purchase, it is a great question. It's a question we actually discussed last year as an advisory committee, because we basically debated back and forth about the frequency for cruiser purchases, because those vehicles get a lot of wear and tear. In the past, we had skipped a year, and then the maintenance expenses for the cruisers piled up. So what we have right now is we basically budget a cruiser every year, but there's a cycle so that when when a vehicle is sort of going out of rotation for the police department, it is put to other use within the town department, so it's not just going away or whatever. But we had that discussion last year, and the decision was to continue with the regular cadence, based especially on the maintenance and the wear and tear on those vehicles. And then your other question on firearms and supplies, Chief can chime in if I'm wrong, but yeah, it is relatively constant because it's tied to the number of people on our force, which doesn't fluctuate all that much, and it is a recurring expense.
Is that a good answer? Thank you. So it sounds like they are. It is a regular, normal expense every year. Okay. All right. Finished with public safety, 31, page 31. Total education, $18,716,052. That includes both Neshoba Regional School District and Minuteman Regional Voc Tech. Separate line items in that total. Public Works, total highway, $967,673. Construction and maintenance, $209,100. Snow and sand, $180,000. Transfer station, $267,290. Landfill, $6,100. Sewer, $26,790. Water, $6,000. Cemetery, $8,800. Total public works, $1,681,922. And I'll stop there. Any questions on public works? Go ahead.
Don Cole, 442 Main Street. On the 18 million in the school budget, it's stated that previously on page 8 that we're funding the employee benefits at 100%. Is that 18 million funded at 100%? The employee benefits that are in there? Historically, you've never done that. So retirement, healthcare costs.
Can you repeat that? Are you talking about the OPEB benefits or
Yes.
the OPEB benefits? Okay, Mr. Mulcahy, you want to
OPEB.
speak to the OPEB benefits? Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
You're referring to the employment, the post benefits, the post-employment benefits.
Post-retirement healthcare, post-retirement payments.
When you're saying that we are funding our OPEB, you're saying at 100%? I'm just clarifying, making sure I understand the question.
Okay. You hire an actuary, I think you pay $30,000 to $50,000 a year to have a professional come in and say, you should put away this much money for post-retirement benefits for the teachers. And historically, you've not put that money away, but you've added to obligations of the various towns. On page 8 in here, the towns, our town leaders have said we're funding 100% of these benefits, but your 60-some-odd% historically has not been funded at 100%, and I wanted to hear if you are doing it this year.
Thank you. I understand the nature of your question now. I think you were referring back to Mr. Boyle's slide that he gave earlier, and that is
And
on
what's on
the
here?
town side employees. The OPEB liability for the school system is over $54 million.
Right. That's big
And
money.
so we have made a nominal contribution year over year of $50,000 to that. Mr. Mulcahy, do you want to talk about our strategies moving forward on that?
No, it is a substantial and important question to ask, so I appreciate you bringing it forward. To that end, not only my entry planning findings, but also through the work with Budget and Warrant Subcommittee, and I see we have a school committee member here to speak to it, the school committee is forming an OPEB Management Advisory Council Committee? Advisory Committee, thank you, which will include a member of the school district, but Mr. Esch can speak to the rest of the, but we do need to make some substantial steps towards addressing our OPEB liability, because the $50,000 that's in there is a minimal and sort of a nominal contribution to what it probably needs to be. However, a 1-year shift towards what the actuarial report recommends, paying towards that OPEB liability, which does fluctuate year to year. We are not there yet, and we need to be closer to that. So we're going to be working in conjunction with our school committee and the members of that group to take some long-term steps to address that liability. So I'll let Mr. Harash speak to the remainder of that.
Thank you. Mike Horish, Burnham Road, Neshoba Regional School Committee. Don, thank you for the question. I've been expecting it for about a full year. So it's, honestly, I appreciate the questions, and I do mean that. Those are the kinds of questions that affect change. For the 5 years that I've been in this committee, it has felt like we haven't really done much to chip away at our liability. As one of our goals for the Budget and Warrant Subcommittee this year, we were tasking ourselves with developing a strategy on how to crack open our liability, which is a liability and not a debt. There is a difference. We do have a substantial liability. We've had a liability like this for years. It was a liability that we've inherited. But on the April 26th school committee meeting, through a recommendation from the Budget and Warrant Subcommittee meeting, the school committee voted on and adopted for the formation of, let me see if I can get this, an OPEB Management Advisory Committee, because as some of you may know, there's nothing that the school committee needs more than another advisory and another committee. But the point here is to really twofold, both to educate the public and to invite them into partnership with trying to solve this. Word has not gone out officially. We've crafted the letter. I just need to get it out to the towns, inviting members of our town government as well as residents from each town to come up with a recommendation to bring forth to the school committee by December 31st so that we can incorporate that into the FY25 budget. Currently we're looking at the FY24, so that would mean this time next year is what we would be looking to have a strategy. So I understand that these are frustrating circumstances, but the good news is that we have an action planned, and I think it's a worthwhile endeavor, and I think it's going to get us to where we need to be.
Thanks, Mike.
A follow-up question, if I may?
No, I think we've got some other people here who have a question.
I'll wait.
You had your say. Next.
My name's Ted Barton, 35 Vaughan Hill Road, and I have some questions for the school contingent, if I might.
Okay.
Okay. So before I get to my questions, I just wanted to underscore what I think I heard in that previous exchange, that we have an unfunded liability of $54 million on benefits. Is that correct?
48. It's under 50 right now. It goes up and down year to year, though.
Okay, so call it 50 million.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
It's a projection that shifts according to
It's a lot of money.
personnel.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So Superintendent Downing, in your remarks on the budget book, you mentioned that you had budgeted this year a 7.5 FTE reduction in staff. And I'd like to ask for a little context around that. So how many total employees does the district have?
So they can hear me. The total employees are approximately 540 total employees, and the reductions were based upon looking at standards across the system. So you'll have to help me, Mr. McCarron, but we would cut in the district administration, our Unit A certified staff, and also our Unit C support staff.
Okay. So about a 1.3% staff reduction. And what did we see in terms of student body count year over year?
Can I interject here, please? I would like you to ask a question, please. And then we can have the appropriate parties answer it, but we don't, on town meeting floor, have a debate between two people going back and forth with multiple questions. So if you could sum up your question, please.
Okay, well, that was the second of my three questions. I'd like to, and again, this is for context, 7.5 FTE reduction is a nice number, but I'm looking for some perspective around that. So I got the perspective on the total employee count. I'd also like a handle on student body count. And then I have a question on debt service. And basically, I'd like to know in round numbers what the town is looking at for debt service on the new high school, assuming that some of the projections I've been reading in the paper are in the ballpark.
So I'm going to interject there as well. The new high school is not on this warrant, and we could spend hours tonight talking about it, but we're not going to.
And I appreciate that it's not on the warrant, but I do think it's important before we vote on a 6% budget increase to have some idea of what's lurking in 5 months for debt service.
Can I ask if that information it's not available, but I know there is a website that has the information to date on the high school, and can we share that website so people can check that out?
Yeah, you can go just for nrsd.net and click on the school building project links, and it'll take you directly to the school building project. And we have some important meetings that are coming up in terms of the building project, so you can see all the schedule of events there.
So when would the next meeting be that somebody could go to a public meeting and ask questions?
The next meeting is May 18th. Yeah, May 18th, isn't it? May 18th is the next school building committee meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I get an answer to my student body question?
Sure.
Yeah. So the student body, the number of students right now is we're approximately 830 students this year. Next year, we're forecasting 838 students. At the high school, correct. And at the school system, we're going to be level from this year to next year. We experienced a drop last year to this year because we graduated the largest graduating class ever at Neshoba High School of 246 students, and we had just over 200 kindergartners come into the system. So we had a drop last year, but this year we're going to be remain level going into FY24.
Thank you. And I have another question. That's it. Thanks.
I don't have that number committed to memory.
We have a question here?
I'm the Minuteman
Okay.
Business Manager, just if there was any questions I wanted.
Thank you very much. Question over here?
Yeah, I have a question for the school
Can you
committee.
please introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry. Omid Garoni, 18 Fry Road. I have a question for school committee or the school. For the special ed program, per Association of Pediatric of America, they said the number of kids going to be marked as with autism or special need, and due to COVID, there was a huge backlog, and also there's a lot of kids that are going to need those help. It's going to go high within the next couple of years. Through a lot of meetings that I attended from your school committee and your staff, you said special ed is a huge cost driver. What are you guys doing to plan for this huge backlog to come to our school? How are you guys trying? Because we don't have any other way to bring money to the town other than what we got, other than raising taxes. What is school planning to tackle those issues for FY24 and 25?
So in terms of what we're doing for students for the future as they coming out of COVID, well, as we're looking at, and you'll see it in our strategic plan, our multi-tiered systems of support and what we're doing in terms of the reorganization of our intervention groups and bringing along our coaches in literacy and math in the coming years are designed specifically to get into the systems to provide targeted instruction to students who may be lagging behind. So this year in our budget, we were able to purchase a data dashboard for the first time, and also our benchmarking tools that allow us to monitor student learning closer than we ever have before in the school system. So we'll be leveraging and growing those tools to help and support students as we go along.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Don, do you have a different question?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Don Cole, 442 Main Street. I would ask the advisory committee, to be more careful with their language. This language is, I think, is misleading, that we're 100% OPEB funded. As you heard from the school, they're not doing it. I look at this whole thing as what I'm voting for or against tonight as OPEB related and underneath there, and I would ask that that be differentiated. A simple put in general government is 100% would be fine, but I think it needs distinction.
Yep, I appreciate that. We can specify that it's town employees.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to continue on page 33. Board of Health, 66,068. Excuse me? Hang on a second. I'll call on you when I'm ready. Thank you. Board of Health, 66,068, and you can go back. That's okay. Nursing, 8,709. Council on Aging, 113,995. Veterans Services, 40,761. Total Human Services, 229,533. Culture and Recreation, total library, 543,239. Recreation, 79,465. Historic Committee, 6,150. Celebration Memorial Day, 4,000. Total Culture and Recreation, 632,854. Debt Service, $1,076,629. Employee Benefits, $1,938,155. Other Insurance, $130,998. For a total budget of $29,155,889. And I'll take any other questions about the budget.
Jeff Paris, 34 Danforth Lane. I was just looking for clarity on the $100,000 for the building inspector for the 380 Main Street inspections. If we're already paying him a salary, is he able to do these, or is the $100,000 going for a third party to help assist in those inspections?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Yeah, we need to have more than just our one inspector doing that because it's such a huge project. So it's going to be paying for multiple people to be doing those inspections.
Are there any other questions on the budget? Yes. Do you need a microphone? Can we get a mic over here, please? Hang on. Raise your hand, please. I cannot hear you. You're going to have to speak into a mic. You can't hear me? Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yes, please.
Ronald Pawelski, 45 Whitcomb Road. My question is both for the town and for the school. Was there a comparative analysis done from a health insurance standpoint that would roll both the school and the town into the group insurance commission? And if so, what was the impact of that?
Sorry, I just want to make sure the mic is on. Thanks for the question. The answer is no. There has not been an analysis under Chapter 32B of entering the GIC or making plan design changes to mimic the GIC plan design across the town and the school district. But what I will tell you, so the Finance Committee and the Select Board have much more insight into the benefit structure of the town employees. The school district's employees, both Minuteman and Neshoba, they contract separately for their employee benefits, and they have a different plan design, different rate structure. I can share, I think Mr. Haresh would be okay with me saying this, that in connection with the OPEB discussion, he and I have talked about the need to do sort of a global analysis of employee benefits across the three towns and the districts, because the town employees and the district employees may have differences in the structure of their benefits, their co-pays, deductibles, all of that. And in order to make an educated recommendation about how to fund an OPEB liability, which is tied to a lot of that stuff, we need to have a baseline, which quite honestly does not exist at the moment. But thank you for your question.
Okay, another question here.
Yes, Ashley Springs, 76 Woodley Road. I just wanted to clear a couple things up. Under, this one's for Superintendent Downing. Did you say that we're going to have a reduction in the number of teachers that we have in the district? Staff, okay, so not necessarily teachers, but you said it was administrator support, perfect. And then I just wanted to clear it for Parks and Rec. It looks like there's a double, it's like doubled for this year. Are we hiring somebody to manage or to do Parks and Rec, another coordinator? Because it looks like last year it was about 16 grand and it's gone up to, I lost my spot, but. Parks and Rec.
Okay, we'll,
Okay.
Brian?
Does that make sense? You seeing the numbers?
Yeah, you're looking at the wages for Parks and Rec coordinator? Yeah. Yep. Okay, so that reflects an increase in the hours for our existing Parks and Rec coordinator.
Not a second position.
Yeah, not a second position. And just to be clear, because I think this is an important point. So Parks and Rec, there's also a Parks and Rec commission. And so not only do we do sort of our financial look at these things, but the commission can come, or any town board and committee can come and say, this is our recommendation. So it was based not only on looking at compensation for the number of hours being worked, but also the commission's recommendation on the workload of that person, and basically the fact that the position was doing work and was not being compensated for it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Alyssa Taglieri, 156 Century Mill Road. My question's about the school budget. So I know that the state has done some reports and offered some grants to replace reading curriculums that don't meet expectations, including Fontes and Pinnell, which is currently used in our district, and Lucy Calkins, which is used the units of study curriculum. Is there plans in the budget to apply for one of those grants? I know that the due date was January. Or is there a plan in place to replace the curriculums that don't meet expectations for reading in the elementary schools?
Yeah, yes. Can we rephrase that question? I'm not sure I heard it.
Oh, sorry. Microphone / talking to somebody.
Right.
My question was just about whether there was money budgeted, or if the grant through the state had been applied for to replace reading curriculums that have been evaluated and the state deems do not meet expectations for evidence-based programs. And currently, all of the NRSD elementary schools use Fontes and Pinnell and Lucy Calkins, which are on the do not meet expectations. And they asked that school districts who are still using them replace them. They've offered grants to cover 50% of that. I was wondering if we had applied for that or if there was money to budget for it.
Are we hiring for that position? Do you have an answer?
Yeah, there are a multitude of grants that are offered by the Department of Education. Our Assistant Superintendent, Laura Friend, who's in charge of teaching and learning monitors and works on all those grants. You can see her presentations regarding that matter. In terms of the literacy grant, specifically for the high-quality instructional materials, yes, there are. But as I'll say, there is a multitude of them, so we don't apply them all because they come with strings attached to them as well. So we just have to evaluate them one at a time. But I'm happy to answer your questions if you reach out to me at the school office. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Need a microphone again.
Ronald Pawelski, 45 Whitcomb Road. My question is relating to the Council on Aging budget, which represents 0.3% of the total town budget. and where seniors represent over 20% of the Bolton population, why is the optic here is that the Council on Aging budget is grossly underfunded? Could somebody go over the logic associated with how that budget number was derived?
Okay, thank you. Question is on the budget for the Council on Aging, and why is it not funded higher?
Okay, appreciate that question as well. I will say, I think we probably all sort of share that general feeling about the demographic shifts in town and how the Council on Aging budget doesn't reflect the fact that our 60-plus population is probably going to be 20% of Bolton residents or more in the coming years. So I think we would like to fund it more. What we do right now is we're guided by the recommendations of the Council on Aging leadership, and so we work with them in developing their budget. I think they're conservative in what they ask for, but they do a lot with what they have at the moment. But absolutely, if we're able to bring in new sources of revenue to the town, I think funding the Council on Aging more robustly would be a priority.
Thank you, Brian. All right, I think we're ready to vote the budget. And I think we hopefully are ready to track it with our remote devices. So we are on Article 3, Fiscal Year 2024 Operating Budget, and this is voting to approve that the town will vote to raise and appropriate $29,155,889.24. Let's open the voting, please. Green is a yes. Red is a no. Has everyone voted that wants to vote? Okay, no nays there. Let's close it, please. This is a majority vote. And the vote is 117 in favor, 21 opposed. That passes by majority vote. Article 4, spending limits of revolving fund accounts. This is sponsored by the Select Board and requires a majority vote.
Move the article, Mr. Moderator.
Second.
The article has been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion on spending limits of revolving fund accounts? Seeing none, we will vote. Let's open the question, Paul. Article 4. Green is in favor of Article 4. Red is opposed. Does anyone need more time to vote? Seeing no hands raised, let's close that, please. This is a simple majority. The vote is 128 in favor, 6 opposed. That passes. Article 5, regional agreement. The sponsor is the Neshoba Regional School District. This requires a majority vote, and do we have someone? I'm sorry. Thank you. Move. The article's been moved and seconded. Thank you. And now we'll have a speaker talk to this article.
Hi, everyone. I'm a bit shorter than most here. So thank you for having me. My name is Leah Viverito. I am currently serving as the chair of your Neshoba Regional School Committee. So I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, to all the members of the advisory committee that helped me put this together, the RAAAC, and it included advisory board member Mr. Brian Boyle, school committee member Sharon Pock of Lancaster, select board member from Stowe Ellen Sturgis, and various residents from the three towns, Kathy Kono, Lorraine Ramasco, and Jen Fletcher, and myself. I also need to take a moment to thank a Bolton resident, Dr. Mary McCarthy, who's sitting right here. She is a former school committee member, and the genesis of this regional agreement amendment was because Dr. McCarthy was actually trying to ensure that Bolton representation was accurate. So you hopefully picked up some materials on the way in. It gives you the full agreement as amended, and it's quite a significant change in format, but substantively there's probably nobody will probably notice any difference in the way that the schools operate and the way that the district interacts with the towns. So I do have a cover letter that Mr. Boyle actually put together and that the RAAAC approved that gives you kind of a comparison of what is different. But I want to just share with you guys in short, to save your time, just a couple of the things that are changing. So the original piece here was to make sure that we were standing by the one person, one vote principle, which is a constitutional protection, and that then forced us to increase the number of the members on the school committee. So every town got one additional member. We thought perhaps Bolton would just get an additional member, but the calculation made it so that all the towns received a new member. And so we've been operating under that new composition now for a few years, as this started in 2019. And so the school committee is now 11 members. We also did this process to save money. I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. We didn't hire lawyers to do this. Dr. McCarthy spearheaded it, and various other members from the community stepped up to do this on our own with the help of DESE. And we had enough expertise to make it happen, so I'm really proud about that. Lawyers did get involved at one point, but it was a minimal cost to the district. We changed the membership a little bit, as I just said. We altered the vacancy procedure a little bit, although there's not a huge difference. The terms of school committee members will be extended until the organizational meeting in June, just so that we can wrap up school committee business. We added the powers and duties of the school committee, which is already there by statute. We made sure that any school that is shared by all three towns is centrally located to the extent that it is feasible. We also inserted a clause that was about housing students in times of emergency, which the Department of Education felt very strongly about, whether it was a flood in a school or some other piece there. Fiscal matters is probably the biggest piece of all of this. We did say that the school committee is responsible for adopting a budget by March 15th. We also inserted a clause that said the school committee will be educated on and take into consideration Proposition 2.5 limitations that the towns face. We inserted a clause that requires the school district to conduct a roundtable with all town leaders before the budget hearing, although prior to this amendment being ratified by the towns, we are doing that anyway, so we're proud of that. Operating costs will be based upon foundation enrollment, which is defined in the agreement, and it's basically a 5-year rolling average of enrollment. Other district-wide capital costs are going to be assessed in the same way that operating costs are. And we changed some language in the agreement to match with the town leases that handled how capital costs between $5,000 and $10,000 will be assessed to the towns. We added statutory language that explains how the regional schools incur debt. That's already on the books, and it's actually the procedure used in 2000 or 1998 to build this auditorium. Added statutory language that explains the necessity of an excess and deficiency fund, or E&D, and added some oversight responsibility to our audit advisory committee, which we all felt very strongly about. We boosted the transportation language just to make sure that our reimbursement always happens, and assessment for transportation will be treated as an operating cost. The amendment procedure was altered a little bit. Usually it is going to be all of the towns have to approve the amendment unless the amendment is trying to change the composition of the committee. If that is the case, it's a 2/3 vote. We wanted to change the withdrawal and admissions of towns to make it so that it is basically a unanimous vote of all 3 towns. There's also some other statutory language that we inserted that needed to be there. So those are the changes that we made to the regional agreement. It was a long process, sometimes arduous, but I'm very proud of the group that put it together, and we ask for your support tonight. So thank you to all of you and to the town of Bolton.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions about the new regional agreement for the Neshoba Regional School District? Seeing none, we'll vote. This is a simple majority vote. We'll open it. Paul, please. Is there anyone that needs more time to vote on this Article 5? Seeing none, we'll close. Paul, please. This passes by 125 to 6. Article 6, Town Clerk position. This is to see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to petition the General Court to enact special legislation to change the office of town clerk from elected to appointed. And
The article, Mr. Moderator. Second.
moved and seconded. So basically changing the town clerk position from elected to appointed. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, let's open the vote. Paul? I'm sorry, come on up. Feel free to queue up.
Hi, Bud Patterson, 284 Long Hill Road. Why are we changing it from elected to appointed?
Thank you for the question. Do we have, who is?
Is this on? Now is it on? Now it's on. In the course of possibly replacing the town clerk in the near future, what used to be a job that used to be fulfilled with a general skill set, has become more specialized. And in order to make sure we have the right candidates to fulfill the specialized requirements of the job, we may have to go outside of town limits to find that person. And this allows us to do that.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you. So changing the town clerk position to an appointed position, which allows us to look at a wider group of people to fill a more specialized position. Any other questions? Seeing none, let's open the vote, please. Yes, you agree to changing this position. Does anyone need any more time? Let's close it. Thank you. This is a simple majority. 117 in favor, 18 opposed. That passes. Article 7, Cemetery Committee Fees and Governance. To see if we will amend Chapter 126 Cemeteries on the Code of the Town of Bolton as follows. And
Move the article, Mr. Moderator.
the article has been moved and seconded. This is sponsored by the Cemetery Committee and requires a majority vote. Is there any discussion on Article 7?
My name is Donald Baum from 125 East End Road, and I'm on the Cemetery Committee. And there's a couple of reasons that we're doing this. One of them relates to land. We have kind of limited space in our cemeteries these days, and people who come in and get a free lot, well, sometimes they get a lot of free lots. And this kind of makes people think about what they really need. And we do have several lots in town that are assigned to families that are 18 lots strong, and there's 2 graves in them. And that piece of open land, we can get it back, but it's a very involved process to go through to do that legally, to obtain that land back. And I've lost my train of thought. The other reason is money. And maintenance of the cemeteries. We, right at the moment, have several graves with broken stones that we'd like to repair. Our budget is very low, as you can see from the budget proposal this year. We've already used that money, and we didn't use it for repairs in the cemetery. It's actually used for burials, and even though we charge for our burials, we don't have that on a revolving account, so the charges go back into the general coffers, and our budget gets, quote, used with that. So we don't have the money to do the repairs without using perpetual funds. So we're looking to charge for the lots, putting this money into perpetual fund, all of it, so that we can maintain your graves and your family's graves in the future.
Thank you for that explanation. Appreciate it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's open the vote, please. Article 7, Cemetery Committee Fees and Governance. Green is voting to approve this change. Does anyone need any more time? Seeing none, let's close it. Thank you. This is a simple majority. And this passes 133 to 2. Article 8, subdivision bond appropriations. To see if the town will vote to appropriate funds held as cash bonds or appropriate the proceeds of surety bonds to be spent under the direction of the planning board for completing the work.
Move the article, Mr. Moderator. Second.
The article has been moved and seconded. This was sponsored by the Select Board and yes, requires a majority vote.
Yes. Well, first, we need to make a slight amendment to this article, but as a prelude to why this article is here, we have a claim pending with the Hanover Insurance Company following the planning board's finding that the developer of Keys Farm subdivision is in default. Because the current bond exceeds $100,000, we need an appropriation from town meeting to authorize the planning board to apply bond proceeds once received to complete the subdivision work. The amendment that I would like to make is to change the wording in its entirety in Article 8 to the following. I move that the town appropriate $115,140 from the proceeds of a surety bond issued by the Hanover Insurance Group to be spent under the direction of the planning board for the purpose of completing bonded work at the Keys Farm subdivision, contingent upon the planning board finding that the developer of the subdivision is in default of its obligation to complete said work.
All right, we have an amendment proposed as read. And do we have that? It's this quotations on the bottom that Stan just read that. So he's changing the wording of the article to make it very specific because there is a need for this situation, and that was really the point of the article. Are there any questions or comments about this?
There are a number of subdivisions in town where the surety is no longer sufficient to pay.
I'm sorry, could you introduce yourself,
Oh,
please?
sorry, David Bosley, 87 Laurel Road, my apologies. There are a number of subdivisions in town where the surety is no longer sufficient to complete the work to this town, to the standard of the town, Keys being one of them. So one of my concerns is, are we setting here a precedent that certain people may have an expectation that the town will complete this work to the standards that we as a town can accept it? To me, that is a financial and a moral hazard that as a town's member, I may not want to accept. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Do you guys want to answer that?
Well, for this evening, we're speaking strictly and solely about the Keys Farm subdivision. The last speaker is correct that there are potentially one or more other subdivisions of which roads are not yet completed. They are not the subject of this town meeting. We will deal with those subdivisions and roads on a case-by-case basis as they come up.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Randall Porteous, 536 Sugar Road. Is the $115,000 sufficient to do the work required?
Now that the planning board has declared the developer in default, there will be a review of what is left to do, look at a physical on-site visit and see what is necessary to be done, and we'll make that determination. So no, we do not know yet whether or not that bond is sufficient, but that work is going to be ongoing.
Mark?
Mark Chunto, Fox Run Road. Looking at this, I'm assuming that the proceeds that we're approving tonight will be sought after from the Hanover Insurance Company in litigation. Is that how the town is planning to recoup this, or are we going to pay for this gratis?
There's a surety bond that is left, and the amount is $115,140. So once we get access to that funds from that bond that was posted by the developer, they'll be used to complete the work on the road.
My mistake. I was under the impression that the Hanover company was balking at making that payment. So I misunderstood. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. So the point is there is a bond there, but we have to pass this to move forward with making a claim on it in the interest of getting the work done. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, let's open the vote. Yes, Green is in favor of this amendment. We are voting the article as the new wording, correct?
You want to vote the amendment, or do you want to vote the article as amended?
We'll vote the article as amended. That's probably the better way to do it. Thank you. Meaning that we only need to have one vote. So you're voting for what Stan read. Yes. Thank you. Sure. Let's vote on the amendment, that we would approve the amendment, and then we'll vote the article a second time, which will be the actual amendment that we just voted on. So we're voting on the amendment, changing the wording as Stan said it. Okay? So this is yes, you're in favor of the amendment to change the wording of the article. Thank you. Does anyone need any more time? Let's close it. Okay, the amendment has passed 128 to 7, so now we will vote on the article itself, which is now the amended version. 2 parts. So let's open that vote, or do you have, can you do that, or do you want me to do it by voice? Got it, okay. So we're going to open a new vote, which is voting the article as amended. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close that vote. Simple majority. That passes 120 to 10. Article 9. To amend the bylaw on door-to-door solicitation.
Move the article, Mr. Moderator.
Second.
The article has been moved and seconded. And this is, if you read your warrant, this is a pretty lengthy description of how this would be amended. And requires a majority vote. Is there any explanation?
I'll give a quick one. We had an equivalent article. This article and the wording will replace what currently exists in Chapter 193, Article 11 or 2. We had one that was just named solicitors. That had been deemed unconstitutional. We were challenged by a commercial entity that was planning to take us to court. We did research and found that our solicitation bylaw, or not to allow solicitation in Bolton, was not constitutional. So we have reworded this particular bylaw to make it comply with state law and to make it more constitutional, if you will. It outlines a fairly detailed set of requirements that any organization that wishes to solicit door-to-door must comply with if they do wish to solicit within the town of Bolton. So this was necessary to change this bylaw to make it work with state law.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, my question is regard to the fee, the $25 fee. Where did we come up with that? And the follow-up is that how much is going to actually cost the town to verify all those information before issuing those licenses? And is the fee is going to cover all those? Because those are additional work and everything we're putting on the police chief and everything and his section.
The question was will the $25 fee cover the cost of doing the research?
Yeah, $25 fee was based on comparable fees in neighboring towns. I know the town of Clinton has a comparable fee. It will likely roughly cover the cost of the service being provided by the police department.
Thank you.
Kathy Jones at Fox Run Road. I have a question on the exemptions, which are on page 17, paragraph 193-15. Why do the exemptions only apply to children 14 years old or younger, which is about 8th grade? What about the high schoolers? What about the Girl Scouts that are selling cookies and they're older than that? I had a kid just this afternoon from the baseball team come and knock on the door. They should be exempt. Why are they not included? And if not, we should amend that.
Yeah, it's not a legal question, it's really a policy question. This is based on a model bylaw used in another town, but you're certainly free to amend that. It's an exemption that we found other towns were using, but you're free to amend that.
Okay, let's have this question and come back.
My concern is with the
Can you
commercial
please
applicant.
introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. Cristiano, 377 South Bolton Road. My concern is with the term commercial. A lot of our youth organizations are based on national nonprofit corporations. Those corporations contract with for-profit companies. I'll give you an example, the Girl Scouts selling their cookies. It's easy to see that as a commercial activity. I don't want us to get hooked on that, so I'm going to propose the following amendment. In that section, 193-15, I want to add Part D, youth groups. Provided said group is chartered, founded, or based in the town of Bolton. B, chartered, founded, or based in a surrounding community and serves the youth of Bolton. Or C, associated with the Neshoba Regional School District. And that will cover not only the high schoolers, but it'll also cover kids that work in like scouting programs up in Harvard, anyone that wants to come and serve a youth program in the community.
Can you bring that wording over here? Unless you have it in writing for us?
Read it right there.
Yeah, I know, but I have to have it for the minutes.
No problem. Okay, I'm going to read this again. He has proposed an amendment.
Could you email it to me?
Yeah.
Could you email it to townclerk@townbolton.com?
Yep. All right. Let me just read it real quickly. We are on page 17, 193-15, exemptions. This is a proposed amendment to add an exemption D, called youth groups. Provided said group is, A, chartered, funded, or based in the town of Bolton. B, chartered, funded, or based in a surrounding community and services the youth of Bolton. C, or associated with the Neshoba Regional School District. So there's no age limit on this, and it would exempt youth groups that meet those criteria. Is there any discussion on the proposed amendment? If you could email it. Oh, I'm sorry. The amendment has been proposed, and I heard a second. I did hear one. Second. Okay, so that has been proposed and seconded. Yes.
Quick question, clarification. Tim Veccarelli, 15 Laurel Road. If we make that amendment, does A and D then conflict with each other? Would there have to be additional wording?
From my reading of A is for a youth 14 or under that is working for a corporation under the direction of an adult.
Can anyone either on the...
Yeah, A is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Can you convince me that it is, I'm Brenda Troop, I'm Meadow Road.
Can I help you?
Sign up that says no works. Can you get rid of it? It's just stupid.
Excuse me?
I have a grandchild who's 10, and she's got a sign up paper on a road, Brenda Troop, and there's a sign that says no ways. And I don't It's just stupid. So make it go away.
Okay. Any other comment?
On the amendment, right?
On the amendment. The amendment, we are right now debating the amendment, which is to add a section D, youth groups. Any comments? All right, let's open the vote on the amendment. And yes would be to approve this amendment be added to this bylaw. We have not yet voted the bylaw. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close that. This is the amendment to add section D, simple majority, 124 to 5. That passes. The amendment passes. So now we will go back to the article itself, and we have some more discussion.
So I guess this is a legal question. I mean, I've lived here 26 years, and we've always had no solicitors. And why can't we just keep it that way? I mean, I know you're saying that we had a possible lawsuit, but I'm thinking of, like, okay, I'm a big dog lover, and what about people coming on our property and with all those invisible fences and whatever, somebody gets bit or knocked over by a dog, or somebody trips and falls on your property? Like, that opens homeowners up, right, to a lot of lawsuits, whatever. And I don't want to be bothered by people coming to my door. Like, I mean, if I could just vote maybe for local school kids coming, I can handle that, but I don't want commercial salesmen coming to my door. So legally, can we keep the law the way it is and say no solicitors?
Mr. Moderator, I can answer that. Brian Falk, Town Council. So we are not able to maintain the bylaw that we have because it violates the First Amendment. Commercial speech in this manner, door-to-door solicitation, is treated as protected speech, so we may regulate it, but we may not prohibit it, and that's what this bylaw would do. In terms of, can I opt out? The answer is yes. There's a section in this bylaw that allows any resident to give their name to the police department that they opt out, and then any solicitor who's licensed through this bylaw would have that list and would be contrary to the bylaw and subject to fine if they were to solicit on your property.
But that puts the burden on the homeowner, right? So how are you going to get the word out to people who aren't at town meeting or aren't on Bolton Facebook? And is that the state's interpretation of First Amendment violation, or like a federal interpretation of it?
Interpretation by the federal courts.
Okay, so our current bylaw is no longer legal. This is an attempt to improve it. We just heard that there is an opportunity to opt out, get your name on an opt-out list. Sounds like that needs to be shared, that information, so that people know that. Other comments?
Stasha Downey, Still River Road. Super quick, thank you to the gentleman who made the amendment, because I think we're stronger together, and like that's brain power right there, and I appreciate that. I think this is well crafted because we are trying to kind of take into control something that we've been told was out of our control, or that we were wrong about. So I can appreciate that our town's trying to do something and direct this law in the best way for our residents. My question is to Mr. Falk's statement about how we can opt out super quick. Do we have to renew every year on that list, or do we just tell you once and then for the duration of our time as the homeowner are we exempt? Or whatever it's. We're off. We're on the no solicitors list forever.
Yeah, so this is the proposed section 193-16 no solicitation list. There's no time limit on it. So you're on the list, you're on the list.
Awesome. Thank you. Not too much of a burden.
Okay, no time limit. You can get your name on the list, and they are not allowed to come to your home. Any other comments? Yes?
Sorry, Tim Veccarelli again, 15 Laurel. I'm reading 193-16 slightly different because it says residents may submit their property for inclusion. Does that put that property on the list for perpetuity? And if a future resident of the property wanted to get off the list, it's a tiny thing, but I'm wondering if we have a way to cover it.
You're correct. The address would be provided, so it's the property that's on the list. I believe you would read that it's implied that if you request to be back on the list because you want solicitors, you would be able to do that and get your property off the list.
Yes.
Hi, Judy Leonard, 42 Burnham Road. Would we have to mark our properties no solicitors? Because I know in New Hampshire we have to do that.
You may, but you're not required to. This list would be maintained by the police department and provided to anyone who has a license to do solicitation. They would have a list of properties that they're not permitted to enter upon for solicitation purposes.
Okay, and what happens if someone does show up at your house? What do you do? Do you call the police then? Do you not allow them? Do you not talk to them? Well, how do we work? What do you do if you are the homeowner?
So the enforcement mechanism is a penalty, $300 per offense. So if a solicitor goes to 2 homes and it's reported to the police, that would be 2 $300 offenses. So it would be a fairly expensive trip to not follow the no solicitation list.
But I'm asking, as a homeowner, and they're at my door, and I'm on the no, what do I do? Do I call the police right then? What's the procedure as a homeowner?
I think you have to use your best judgment there. If you feel the need to call the police, you should always dial 911. If
Well,
you feel that need.
wouldn't I have to in order to report somebody soliciting?
No, you wouldn't. You could report it the next day. You could report it to the police department at a later time.
And what do I do? Do I describe them? Do I get something from them?
I understand your question, and I think we've answered it. You
I
can.
don't feel you answered it.
Okay.
So
You can
asking
report
for
it.
Okay, and what do I use to what will the police be looking for, I guess? How do I do it? How do I report it? I know I use the phone, or I drive down there.
Well, I can't tell you what the procedure is. I can tell you what the bylaw says, and you have to decide whether you want to support it or not. Okay? Thank you. Next.
Wow.
Hi, Bud Patterson, 284 Long Hill Road. Why can't we make the list opt-in or make the fee like higher to discourage soliciting?
You are free to do both of those things. That would require an amendment to the bylaw that's on the table.
Oh. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So we approved the amendment. We are now voting the article. And the article is to amend our bylaw on door-to-door solicitation with all of the stuff that we've discussed, as well as the amendment being part of it. Open, please, and green is yes. You support this change? Red is no. Does anyone need any more time? Let's close the vote, please. Simple majority. Passes 123 to 8. Article 10. Special act to acquire DCAMM properties. The article has been moved and seconded. Sponsored by the Select Board and requires a majority vote. Is there any discussion?
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator? May I
Yes,
ask?
I'm sorry. We have a few words from the Select Board.
Sure. First of all, please don't be scared. This is not an article to actually purchase anything this evening. So we're not buying any property tonight, and we're not asking you to spend any money. This is more of a procedural thing that we need to do to take the initial step in order to consider purchasing said property at a future town meeting. The property in question, the DCAM property, there are two parcels of land. One is a parcel which is adjacent to the Forbush Mill Road soccer fields. If you're kind of looking at if you're on Forbush Mill Road and looking at the soccer fields, it's the parcel of land that's to the right. They often plant corn, and it's adjacent to the parking lot. That is one parcel that is owned by the state. That's part of the complex in Lancaster with all of the buildings and the youth center and all that good stuff. There is potentially a second piece of land that is also off of Forbush Mill Road, which actually abuts the Taggart property, which the town purchased a few years ago. This article is needed in order to take the first step to allow the state and petition to potentially allow Bolton to purchase these two pieces of property. But first, surveys need to be done. The state needs to determine the value of the properties. We'll be having much more meetings with the DCAM organization to understand what the potential costs are. The fact that we would most likely be using this for municipal use, there is a lower than market value that gets assigned to these particular properties. So there may be a future town meeting if the town decides that it might be advantageous to purchase one or the other or both at a future town meeting, perhaps next year. But right now, we need to take the first step in order to do this authorization and procedural vote in order to take the first steps to get the surveys done in order for the state to determine what a potential price would be. So again, rest assured, we're not buying anything tonight. This vote does not obligate the town to purchase any property in the future.
How you doing? I'm Jonathan Schwartz. I live at 55 Randall Road. Just want to commend the town administrator and the select board for putting forth this article. I think it would be a great addition to our town. The research that I've done indicates that the GIS data for the DCAM parcel adjacent to the Forbush fields, the soccer fields, except for the fact that it has a buried natural gas line running through it, is exactly the same as the Forbush soccer fields. meaning all of the zoning, all of the elevation, the watershed, et cetera. It's a mirror of the existing soccer fields. So my question, I have two questions. First question is, in section 1C, the first sentence says the uses of the parcels shall be restricted to general municipal purposes. Would municipal athletic fields be falling within those municipal purposes? Yes. Okay. And then my second question is that I proposed, therefore, an amendment for section 1C, a new second sentence that would say the town of Bolton shall give first priority use for athletic fields and parking for the parcel of land located off of Forbush Mill Road and identified as assessor's map lot 5.A on lot 8, or as lot 8. So essentially giving first, yeah, I'm proposing an amendment.
An amendment under what section?
Article 10, Section 1C, new second sentence, that would say the town of Bolton shall give first priority use for athletic fields and parking for the parcel of land located off of Forbush Mill Road and identified on Assessor's Map 5.A as Lot 8. So essentially describing the lot and saying that the town would give first priority use for athletic fields and parking.
Well, first of all, there are actually potentially two parcels. The second parcel would not be amenable to soccer fields.
Yep, that's why I'm only describing the one that's adjacent to the existing soccer fields. The other one seems to be landlocked and it's adjacent to the Taggart property. Yeah. Well, your mic wasn't on.
Okay. That would be, obviously, everything is subject to conservation review, so this assumes that there are no restrictions as far as wetlands and that type of thing. So I just want to point that out, that it's not a given that there's not some conservation issues there or something like that. I don't know that there are, but I just wanted to point that out to you.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah,
That's why I specifically said that
well,
it would be first priority use.
It's implied. I mean, when the state came to us a number of years ago, I mean, that would be the number one intention if that particular parcel supports that. We have no idea what the wetland delineations are, what is usable, what is not usable. All the surveys have to be done. But it makes perfect sense that would be the first use of that particular parcel for an additional soccer field if it supports it, and for additional parking.
We certainly had soccer fields in mind, or that type of field. What we don't know is more about the parking, where parking would be okay versus not. But as far as the athletic fields, that Mr. Wysocki is right. That's really the entire thrust behind it to begin with.
Can I ask you if you would be willing to table that amendment and bring it back when and if the town decides to vote to buy the land? And in other words, this is just getting the legislature to let us look into this.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll rescind my motion. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
As you can see, I don't represent Bolton Soccer, but I did come straight from practice. So.
Thanks.
Omi Garoni, 18 Fry Road. I was going to add a motion to amend this article and add a new one to separate the two lands, because a lot of people associate both of them. One, we're purchasing to support the youth with the field and things like that, and the other one is a completely different purpose. So I would like to separate it, because the town has purchased a lot of land previously, and there's some negative aspect of it and positive aspect of it. But as you can see, people are getting confused about the both purchases. So I would like to amend to separate these two purchases in two separate.
All right, hang on one second.
Mr. Moderator?
I think my advice to you is the same thing I just said to the other gentleman, which is this is just to get the ball rolling, and there will be subsequent articles at town meeting that we will be able to vote on, and we'll be able to amend and make sure we get it right. We're not even there yet.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can separate this.
I would say it's a bit premature to be doing any of that. All this does is to take the first step to allow the town of Bolton to potentially purchase these pieces of land for municipal purposes. I think it's quite premature to determine that, you know, one is going to be for this and the other one's going to be for that. We can do that at a later date when we come back, when we're actually considering purchasing the property and what folks would like to do with one or both, or potentially we may decide that it's too expensive and not buy anything. So I would suggest you take the suggestion of our town moderator, please.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any other debate on the article? All right, seeing none, let's open the vote. And this is authorizing the select board to petition the general court to enact special legislation to begin the process, but it's not actually purchasing it. Okay, so it's just getting the process started. Green is a yes. Open the vote. Thank you. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close it, please. The article passes 121 to 8. Okay, Article 11, fire station roof replacement. The article has been moved and seconded. This is to appropriate from the stabilization fund, as Brian discussed earlier, the sum of $345,000 to fund the replacement of the fire station roof. Sponsored by the Public Works Department, this one does require a 2/3 vote. Do we have any discussion about the article? You don't need to do that. That's another vote. Hang in there. Yes?
I have what I hope is a simple question. Ted Barton, 35 One Hill Road. First, I'm impressed that the old roof lasted 58 years. I wish I could say the same for my house. But can somebody give me an idea of how big of a roof we're talking about in square footage, roughly?
Well, I don't know square footage, and maybe Don, you might be able to tell, but the portion of the roof that needs to be replaced is the roof above what you would call the old fire station. And I don't know what the square footage is, but that's an original roof. To your point, it was never renovated or updated or replaced when the public safety building addition was added on, but I don't know what the square footage is.
We might have an answer. Mark, do you know how big the roof is?
The building's approximately 60 by 70, about 4,200 square feet.
So 60 by 70 building, 4,200 square feet, approximate?
Yeah. So about twice the size of a normal house. And we're replacing the entire roof structure. This isn't just a roof membrane replacement.
Yes, we're stripping it right down to the bottom. I'm not a contractor. I drew a blank on the word, but yes, we're stripping it and then redoing it.
Down to the deck.
Okay.
Down to the deck. It is a commercial grade roof. It's a flat roof. Those are expensive roofs.
I mean, this sounds like something we need to do, but that's a pretty pricey roof.
We actually have received bids. We haven't, we're in the process of doing the award. That number is not far off from what it looks like we're going to need to award.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Kia Oceanbine, Main Street. I'm just wondering if anybody considered putting in structure for solar panels in either currently or in the future, or making the roof suitable for future solar panels.
We have not had a discussion yet about solar. Once we get the roof in, I am working on wanting to evaluate solar on both the fire station roof and the public safety building, but we're not there yet.
Okay. Ready to vote? Let's open the vote, please, for Article 11, Fire Station Roof Replacement. Green is yes. Does anyone need any more time? Okay, let's close the vote, please. This is a 2/3 majority. 118 to 5, that passes by a 2/3 majority. Thank you. Article 12, Fire Engine 1 Replacement. The article has been moved and seconded, and this is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, transfer sum of money not to exceed $949,000 for the acquisition of a fire truck. The sponsor is Bolton Fire EMS. This does require a 2/3 majority. Do we have any discussion? Mark?
Mark Chunta, Fox Run Road. I was wondering, in lieu of a formal presentation, whether the fire chief would come up and like to explain what it's replacing, what its principal mission is, and the need. This is a sizable investment for the town of Bolton, and I don't want to be the one, a naysayer of public safety. I was on the fire department here, but it's $1 million. This is
Okay.
a large expense.
So the question is, could the fire chief give us an explanation of what this fire engine is and why we need it? Yeah?
So the current mission of Engine 1 is a water supply truck. It's our second due truck for water supply. Is further question?
If I may.
Yep.
The tanker, was there some renumbering of the engines? Because our tanker was engine 3.
So the tanker's going to carry the water. I'm talking water supply as this truck's going to be put on the fire ponds to supply the tankers. The pump is really the main reason we want this truck. This truck is also our mutual aid truck to our partners that around our communities here that we have agreements with throughout the Fire District 8 and the Commonwealth as well. So that's the mission of the truck. The current truck is a 1995 Pierce Sabre. Currently right now, going out looking at vendors, build times right now are 850 days. We're looking 3 years out for a vehicle that is already creeping up on 30 years. So this is the reason why we're looking at it now, so by the time major components go bad in a 95, we have something already on the line to come to our community. That is inclusive of Pierce, Seagrave, and E1 that I've talked across the manufacturers. We're looking to carry 1,000 gallons of water, if not more. We currently have a 1250 pump and a 1250 of water. We want to duplicate that truck the same. The reason I'm coming to you tonight, basically, is I'm trying to broadcast 3 years out. We've already rebuilt the pump on the 95. We have regular maintenance to keep it up as we're going, but the components are being harder and harder to find. So again, that's why we want to get in line now instead of waiting till 2028 when we thought this was going to start with a 400 building day process. The vehicle, to give you a sense, the vehicle that we approved in '21 is already a year behind. We're expecting them to just start cutting metal for that truck in the next 30 to 60 days. So that's why we're broadcasting this early. As far as the calculation for the number, on average, the past 3 years, it's been 10 to 15% going up. So again, we want to lock that price in now and not let that go up another 10%. It's actually broadcast in July to go up another 12.
Okay. Anything else, Mark?
So the engine that we approved last year, we don't have that as yet.
That's correct, sir.
And that's our MVA, motor vehicle response vehicle.
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm just playing devil's advocate here, at some point we were looking at a brush truck years ago. Now, engine 4 was our previous brush truck, but that's no longer in service. Engine 3, the vacuum pumper, is that back in service?
Yes, it is.
So, inevitably, there's still another truck out there that the station will need, brush truck, in addition to this.
Can I answer?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So we were able to acquire surplus a vehicle, and it's outfitted with pump, tank, was built by the members of the fire department. And that vehicle, yes, we did get rid of engine 4, but we were able to reproduce it with a more sturdy off-road vehicle for the amount of $2,000. That was piping. Your firefighters built that. So we make changes where we can, and we try to lower the budget. So that whole vehicle replacement was $2,000.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the fire engine? Takes 3 years to get it. Wow.
All I'm asking is, what kind of fuel is the fire engine going to use? If we're not going to get it for 3 years, are we going to be in trouble?
The truck will be run on diesel. We did actually investigate the new electric fire trucks are starting to hit the market, but by the time we built the infrastructure within the station, and that truck only carried 500 gallons of water, and for our community, we do not have hydrants. We want to put more water on the truck to get to your front door. We were in excess of $2 million for a hybrid truck, and the system built out that would only carry half of the water we need. But we did look at it.
Okay, good. That's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? Seeing none, let's open the vote on purchasing a fire engine. Green is yes. Does anyone need any more time? All right, let's close the vote, please. This is a 2/3 majority. And it passes. 116 yes to 9 no. Article 13, Citizens Petition, Stop Home Equity theft. Do we have a motion? Move. Is there a second? Second. Okay, thank you very much. All right, the article has been moved and seconded. Would you like to present the purpose of the article? Oh, I'm sorry, 1 minute. I did promise the select board that they could make a statement first.
We would just like to make everyone aware that the town is a defendant in a lawsuit related to this article, and in the interest of the people of Bolton, on the advice of legal counsel, the select board will not be responding to questions or comments about this litigation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Alan?
Good evening. Alan DePietro, Teal Road. There's a lot of reasons people fall behind on their taxes. Unfortunately, when it gets to the point that the town needs to take the property, I hope we can all agree that they should take what's owed to them and not everything. It's an unconstitutional issue. The Supreme Court has actually taken this up. We ought to have a decision by then, by the end of June. But I think the town of Bolton can move forward now, that we don't get ourselves in a position where we get sued more times for this right now. I think one of the bigger problems here is that when the town does take this property, are they going to sell it? Are we just going to sit on it? The reason we take these properties is to recoup the revenue that we didn't get for the taxes. But if we don't sell the property, the town's not going to get anything. And when every other acquisition of property comes before a town meeting, needs a 2/3 vote, I think these ones should as well, especially when we're talking about people's homes. They live there. They're your neighbors. They're going to be thrown out of town. I think we can do better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Just to clarify, this particular article we're voting on right now is a majority vote. Yes?
If I might, I would like to have town council opine on this particular article.
Okay. Town council, could you please give us your perspective on the legality of the issue?
Sure. So one limitation on the authority of town meeting has to do with attempting to direct and control statutory duties by town officials. Statutory duties meaning duties set forth by state law enacted by the legislature. And one of those duties enacted by statute is the tax title process. That's a statewide regulatory scheme. It's not one that Bolton can pick and choose or modify in its own way. There are many topics of law where Bolton may do that through bylaw, through special act, through home rule petitions. But this is not one of them. Taxation is an item that's reserved to the legislature. And it's not one that town may modify by town meeting vote. And so all of the topics in this article concern statutory duties by town officials, primarily the town treasurer with respect to the tax title process, but there are a number of other items in here in terms of land use permitting and the means by which the town either auctions or gets approval by town meeting to sell tax title property. So a long-winded way of saying, if passed, this article would not be enforceable. It's not one where town officials would be able to modify what they do based on this vote. Because, again, this vote concerns statutory duties, and that's an area that the courts have been very clear that town meeting may not exercise direction and control over town officials.
Thank you.
Kathy Junta, Fox Run Road. I agree with everything that town council has said. And if you read the way that this article is worded, the first priority of the town shall be to avoid the necessity of foreclosing. I would argue the first priority of the town is their obligation to the taxpayers who have actually paid our taxes, and not to basically go forever for someone that, for whatever reason, hasn't been able to pay the taxes. But I totally disagree with this article and strongly urge everybody to just vote no. I think we need to worry about ourselves, all of us, and what those of us who are paying our taxes promptly are doing. This just says, never mind, you don't have to, and I just simply cannot abide by that. I say we vote no.
Thank you. Are there any other comments about Article 13? All right, seeing none, let's open the vote. And this is just a majority vote. And a yes would be to approve the citizens' petition as written, and no would be to vote against it. Green is yes, red is no. Does anyone need any more time? Seeing none, let's close the vote. Simple majority. This article fails. 24 yes, 96 against. Article 14, to authorize town elections. The article's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate about the fact that we're going to have a town election in a week? Remember, everyone said before they were going to go, right? We're taking numbers now. All right, let's vote on authorizing the town election. We'll open the vote. And we're going to have one final vote after this, and we're going to do it by voice, okay? Just for fun. I feel like this was such a quiet meeting. No, please be sure to drop off your remote device on the way out the door. They actually cost us a few dollars, so we don't want to lose them. All right, let's close that vote. That passes. We have authorized the election by 116 to 1. The final vote would be to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion? Second. It's moved, seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Good job. I appreciate everyone's help.